This is starting Chapter 2, Section 4, Creating the Constitution. The Philadelphia meeting. May 25th, 1789, the Philadelphia meeting was held because the Articles of Confederation were losing its authority and the states began respecting it less. Participants worked to build a new government that would best meet the needs of the nation.
The Framers. The group of delegates who attended the Philadelphia meeting were known as the Framers of the Constitution. They were men of wide knowledge and public expertise. While most had given a public service in the past, 8 had signed the Declaration of Independence, and 39 were part of the Continental Congress or Articles of Confederation.
So what's the difference, group, between, sometimes I hear us refer to these guys as framers, and sometimes we refer to them as founders. Is that the same thing? Is it different?
I think founders means like to establish something, and framers means to like set a precedent in a way. Like frame what the government should do or what it should look like, or how it should be carried on. I don't know.
Do you guys concur with that, or do you have your own idea?
Because people could have founded the way the government is, but then later on people could have came in and like helped frame like how it would work, like what policies to use and like what it would be based on.
So can you give me examples of who might be considered a founder, who might be considered a framer, and could you be both?
Yeah. George Washington
George Washington what?
has many times been said that he is a precedent, like he set a precedent for later on presidents.
So what is he? Is he a founder? Is he a framer?
He's both, because he framed how the president should act, for example, the 2 terms, and also I think the chief and commander of like the army, like the navy and all that.
So wouldn't that be more of a founder? When we're talking about framers, aren't we referring to actually framing the Constitution which rules our republic? Typically in history, when we say a framer, we're talking about someone who actually helped craft a particular
like
document.
Abraham Lincoln, and after the Gettysburg Address, he kind of did how they abolished slavery there. So that kind of
What about
framed the
John Locke?
Constitution.
In a way,
Thomas
yeah.
Jefferson and all that?
John Locke.
John Locke and then...
John Locke typically would be considered like a contributing Enlightenment thinker. When we talk about the framer, we mean those who helped frame, and that would include everything from the Declaration of Independence to the Articles of Confederation and ultimately to the Constitution. Now, when we say founders, it may be people who helped found the country that weren't involved in that directly. Maybe like Paul Revere or Patrick Henry, who still played a pivotal role but didn't necessarily help craft the documents.
Were all those that like the Boston?
That wasn't like some
Yes,
like
founders.
some guys were left out of the like that meeting where they were gonna write the new constitution. So they're like founders, but they weren't.
Exactly.
This is background information on the framers. The average age of the men who attended this meeting was 42. Half were in their 30s. George Washington is age 55. He made many decisions, playing a key role in the making of the Constitution. The framers brought up a new generation of American politics. Many leading revolution leaders did not attend.
Organization and procedure. The meeting took place in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. George Washington was unanimously selected as president of the convention. By the second day of the meeting, the framers had adopted rules of procedure. Each state delegation was to have 1 vote on all matters, and majority of votes cast would carry any proposal.
Working in secrecy. The Framers decided to keep their meetings and deliberations withheld from the public. William Jackson and others were elected to keep a journal of the convention. Most reliable source were James Madison's voluminous notes.
Luminous.
The final meeting was held.
Voluminous means a lot of
Yeah.
something.
The final meeting was held September 17th. Some of the issues were assigned to committees, but the full body ultimately settled all questions.
Momentous decision. The delegates agreed that the purpose of their meeting was that they had created a new government in the United States and writing a new constitution. It was a decision overall to replace the Articles of Confederation. They had passed Randolph's resolution, and the goal of the majority of the convention never changed.
The Virginia Plan. Virginia was a main participant in the overall plan. This plan was composed by James Madison but presented by Randolph. It called for 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. The legislature was made up of Congress. It was bicameral with representatives of each house determined by either state population or contribution of money towards the central government.
So would you have voted for that if you were from Rhode Island or Delaware?
The Virginia plan?
Why not?
They favored the bigger states.
This plan favored the larger states.
Yeah.
They
How?
had greater population, they had more money that they could be
They don't-
contributing to the central government.
They would have more say in what goes on in the.
Would you be willing to give that up then?
Nope.
Nope.
If I was a small state.
But what if you were from a big state? Wouldn't you
Oh,
say
I'm
it
for
was...
it, man.
Then you loved it.
Why?
Because you'd have more say so in what went on.
Well, not only that, wouldn't you say, well, that's only just and right because we have more people, you know?
Yeah, man, right? Nah. But that was their mentality.
Yeah. Just as long as
Selfish.
you have to be able to argue both sides.
Selfish.
In the House of Representatives, lower house members were elected by each state. In the Senate, upper house members were chosen by the House of Representatives from a list of nominations from each state legislature.
The Virginia Plan. Given all the...
Huh? Sorry. It's supposed to say Congress is given all the powers it held in the Articles of Confederation.
In the Virginia Plan, they could act or veto any state law in conflict with national law, and use it to force if necessary to make a state obey national law. And then the national executive branch and judiciary branch created a council of revision, and state officials had to take an oath.
And in the Council of Revision, they could
Isn't that a check from Rome?
yeah, like they could override the House of Representatives or the Senate, and they had exclusive power to admit new states to the Union. The New Jersey Plan. So this, the one that we had just talked about was more favored towards the larger states, and the New Jersey Plan is the opposite.
Yeah.
It's the smaller states' favored plan. So William Patterson presented the position of the smaller states. It called for amendments to the Articles, but nowhere near as much of a revision as the Virginia Plan. This plan called for a unicameral Congress of the Confederation, with each state equally represented. In addition to the power Congress already held, they would be given limited power to tax and regulate trade.
It included a federal executive made up of more than one person. The people in this were chosen by Congress, but could be removed by majority vote of states' governors. And the federal judiciary with single supreme tribunal appointed by the executive branch.
And a Supreme Tribunal is like a Supreme Court, like a court.
The main conflict between the states was how the states should be represented in Congress. The framers were to make the key compromises in solving this problem through the construction of the Constitution. That's it.
There's still another half. Compromises. Representation in government was thought to be unbalanced, with bigger states having an advantage in dominating vote. Smaller states feared this wouldn't be able to protect their interests as they didn't have nearly as much power.
The Connecticut Compromise. The Connecticut Compromise stated that Congress should be composed of 2 houses. The Senate would have equal representation for all states, as the House of Representatives would be based on population. The compromise between the small and the big states is known as the Great Compromise.
So who gave up? Or was it a win-win, or did people give stuff up?
Win-win.
People had to give something up. What a compromise is.
How was it a win-win, Daniela?
It was a win-win because there was the House of Representatives, where like, okay, there was 2 sections where like one was based on population, which favored the larger states, but then there was one where each state had like the same vote as like every other state.
And it was a departure from where they were originally going, because originally they just wanted one Congress, which is called a unicameral. Now they went to a
Bicameral. It's a bicameral legislature, right?
and one was states had equal votes, the other it was based off of
Population.
population.
The 3/5 Compromise. The question arose as to if slaves counted for the population. Eventually, the debate between the North and the South led to the 3/5 Compromise. The compromise states that 3/5 of all of the persons count towards the population of a state. The compromise was later abandoned after the passing of the 13th Amendment.
Commerce and Slave Compromise. Fearful the government would interfere with exports and slave trade, the southern states wanted a compromise. They later established the Commerce and Slave Trade Compromise. Under the compromise, Congress couldn't tax the export of goods from any other state nor regulate slave trade for at least 20 years.
No, that was they wanted their cake and they wanted to eat it too. The northern states did not want to continue the practice of slavery. As you guys recall, Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence initially meant everyone would be that way, but unfortunately they would not confederate. The southern states would not confederate, and so in order to keep Georgia and the Carolinas in the new government, they had to sell out. Don't you wish sometimes you could go back in history and just say, look what you did to this country, look at the Civil War, look at the years that so many people were left in subjugation in this country. Yeah, they sowed the seeds of this compromise. Some things you just don't what?
You don't realize.
You don't compromise on. And this is one they compromised on that had terrible repercussions.
Bundle of Compromises. The Constitution was known as a bundle of compromises between the states, but what had shaped the document didn't come from compromise. Delegates were in agreement on basic issues and felt a national government should be established. They felt strongly to have the concepts of popular sovereignty and limited government. Although in agreement for the most part, debates raged on by how the president were to be chosen, the congressional structure and limits they should have on power.